T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
That's a little bit longer than 30 seconds, everyone. I do apologize. I didn't time that out properly. I like the funky music. The funky music was giving me some stuff. Hi, everyone. This is Robert Knowles, a.k.a. Silas Knowles from pushboundconsulting.com, Recovery Mode Podcast. How are you doing? It's Friday. Happy Friday. School is in session. Everyone's getting crazy. Everyone's going through this new normal. Just as a reminder, today, we are, I just took the logo away. Boo. So this is why we're here. This is what we do. Recovery Mode, 158-page ebook, talking about our new normal, talking about what's going on with recovery mode, with rapid change right now, going from our old ways of doing school to the new ways of doing school, and the questions surrounding it. Definitely, this is something for all educators, administrators, and even people, parents of children who are in school, parents in general. You guys want questions about what's going on today? Definitely, this is something you want to have in your library. And the best price about it, it's free. That's the great price when you have everything. It's free. You could do it to your ebook, tablet, phone. There are talks of a hardbound edition coming soon. Don't know when that's going to be, but there is a possibility of that. So real quick, actually, that's the wrong one. I want to get back to the right one. So usually on this particular podcast, we go through the contributors, and I thought I was done. Well, no, we went through 16 chapters of 16 contributors, and then I started reaching out, and there's a lot of other educators and people out there that want to talk to us, that want to just be able to discuss education and discuss everything in the world that's going on right now. I have one particular one in the wings, but before I do, let's take a look and introduce him a little bit real quick. So let's take a look at this. So this is that guy, Dave. What's going on? How are you doing today, sir?
Amazing intro, man. I'm kind of creeped out that you dug through the archives and found that thing. Well done.
Hey, that was right on the front page, brother. That was right on the front page. What are you gonna do? And I'm gonna censor myself a little bit, or I'm gonna fault myself a little bit. But that little banner, I had to take it off real quick. I realized there's a spelling error in it, so I had to quickly take it down. So I'll fix that later. So in case anyone saw it, I'm not an English teacher. I'm a history teacher. So don't.
And mistakes are what history is all about, man. It's all good.
History, hey, this last 5 months, we've made mistakes. We're part of history. And so everybody on the Pushbound Consulting Recovery Mode podcast, please chime in. Dave, please introduce to everyone to who that was on that video. Who are you?
Yeah, sir? Man, sure. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. There's no place I'd rather be on a Friday afternoon than hanging out with you. Dave Schmittou, I am hanging out in the great state of Michigan. Father of 4 kids.
Me too.
Right?
Hey.
Boom. I am a professor at Central Michigan University, teaching educational leadership, helping to train up the next batch of school leaders and school administrators. I have been an assistant superintendent, curriculum instruction, been an elementary principal, a middle school principal, AD, athletic assistant principal, teacher, done literally all the things. It seems like I get to write, get to speak, get to hang out and just talk to awesome people like you. That's my life in a nutshell.
I appreciate it. Now, I'm guessing with the videos in the beginning, are those all the medals you've won behind you right there from running?
Those are more like soccer trophies than anything else. So you show up, they say, you get to the finish line, we'll give you some beer and we'll give you a medal. So nice. I sign up and I run for the beer and I run for the medal.
Nice. I like it. Now, how many are there
There's a lot, man. I've done 5 full marathons. Most of those are half marathons. Yeah, most of them are half marathons, but yeah, last year I was lucky enough to do Boston and Chicago, done San Diego a couple times. And actually during COVID, I did my own ultra marathon, went down to Florida and ran 33 miles on a beach just so that I could. So yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's called motivation. I mean,
desperation, insanity. There's a lot of words that we could use to describe that.
Yeah, it's hard enough getting up to the morning after 5 months of being, cooped up, I got to get up now. Jeez, this is ridiculous.
Right. Well, my problem was I put it out on social media. See, I was going to go run my own marathon over the Memorial holiday. Marathon's 26 miles. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to get myself out of this a little bit. I'd already blasted all over social media. I was doing it, so people were expecting me to do it. So I put on social media that instead of doing that, I was going to go run a mile for anybody else that committed to run a mile on Memorial Day, thinking maybe I'll get 15 people to commit and I'll save myself 11 miles. Now I had 33 people and I was like, crap, I guess I'm going farther than I thought. So buckled down and away I went.
Jeez. So professor, educational leadership, author, speaker, runner, father. Am I missing anything?
Oh man.
Podcaster.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there? And you have 4 kids. I have 4 kids. I have no time.
See, a lot of these things you do though because you have 4 kids. That's my situation. So I go for my run because I know none of my kids are going to go for a run with me. So it's my opportunity to get out and get away. When I get to come down and hang out with you, I'm saying, Dad's got to go to a meeting, guys. Sorry, go jump on the trampoline. I'm going to be locked on. This is going to be like a 5-hour meeting, right? So I'll hang out here and do my thing. But no, honestly, this is the kind of stuff that fills my passion. It allows me to feel good and to feel like I'm doing something that matters. So it's all good.
Definitely. Now, when I first heard about you, when I first discovered you, it was from your first book.
Yeah.
It's like, now, if your first book, if you see in the back corner, right above your left shoulder, there it is.
Yep.
There it is. Now, the title, and I think this is what stuck with me for the longest time. It's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
What is that for education? It's like riding a bike. What is that? How do you make that correlation? Like, what does that mean?
So if it's okay for me to take just a couple minutes and kind of tell you how that evolved.
Please.
That was not the original title of the book. So there's a story behind this, and long story short,
you have the airwaves. Go ahead.
So I was presenting at conferences and doing that thing for quite a bit, and ended up connecting with one of my edu heroes, a person that a lot of people would consider an edu celebrity, one of my good friends now. Back when I was presenting at conferences, I reached out to him and said, hey, I've got this concept that I want to run by you because I might want to turn this into a book and I want to get your advice. The long story short is the original name was based off of the sessions that I'd presented at conferences. And the title was, I Don't Care If My Kids Read. I mentioned that to him and he said, provocative. I can't publish that. I can't do anything with that because I'm trying to get people to read. And you're not going to get educators or anybody in a school to pick that up. You're not going to get schools go out and pick that up. The premise of the book was that there are a lot of ways to learn things. Like people that are watching this right now are learning from the video or learning from the audio. Sometimes you go outside and you learn from experimentation. in the world that we're in now, is a lot of us are learning through COVID and remote learning. Our kids aren't necessarily just going to learn from reading and picking up a book or a textbook, or that's not necessarily how everybody reads today. Communication has evolved and changed, and we can mass communicate in a lot of different ways. So I was presenting this, and he said, you know what, I've got an idea. Let's repackage this. And I'd used an analogy in the book about teaching my kids to read. And I said, I didn't give them the owner's manual and say, go study this, and then you're going to go out and learn how to read. I ran alongside them, and I taught them the skill that they will never forget by having them do the skill. And that became how the book took form. He shaped it and recrafted it and said, hey, now I think you've got something. And I took it off to another publisher, and they loved it. And the rest is kind of history. But the premise is, why is it that we can teach a kid how to ride a bike, which is a complex, dynamic skill? By the time they're 5 years old, and truly, they will never forget it for the rest of their life. But we can't teach a kid something on Monday and expect them to remember for a test on Friday. There's something wrong there. So I basically walked through the steps that we use to teach a kid how to ride a bike, which is a lot of doing, a lot of action, a lot of getting in the trenches, getting muddy, falling down, picking back up, support, safety, and said, this is what it would look like if we did the same thing in our classrooms. So
that's a great segue just to kind of combine everything, because there have been so many times you're in the classroom, I'm in the classroom, and you go, I just taught this on Monday, and there's a 5-question quiz on Tuesday. How did you forget this in a 24-hour period? It's like, come on. And the best one is you have an open note test on all the things you've done, and they still don't do well on an open note test. It's like, guys, right. God, please. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's one of those things where when it comes to our new normal now, and it comes to how we've been in the house for 5 months and we've been all stuck inside. I mean, yeah, I know you social media, you got all sorts of stuff going on. I do too. But when it comes to education, I mean, what is the way everyone's progressing forward is what you hoped for? Like, if you were able to, like, because I know we were talking a little bit beforehand, but the way like everyone's progressing forward with virtual learning and everything, given our new normal, is that the way you saw it playing out, or do you wish it would have gone another way?
Yes and no. I'm going to Schmittouize that and kind of ride the fence here. But I think is that patent pending? It is in the works, yes. But honestly, I think that's the answer. I think one of the things that I'm super excited about is we are now pushing boundaries. We are, you like that? We are breaking down the boxes and the molds. We're saying, man, we've got to try something new here. We're not trying to just repurpose and repackage what we always did. We're recognizing now that there are different ways to do things. I was telling you before we went live that the school system I was a part of before I took on my new job, we, back before March 12th, March 13th, when the world fell apart and schools shut down, we were about 3 months into the process of already creating our own virtual school or virtual academy, because we recognized that we had been for the last few years bleeding kids that our school system wasn't working for. They were turning towards charter schools. They were going to homeschool. They were going to private schools. They were leaving our school, and we could look at it and say, go ahead and go. Bottom line is schools are about butts and seats. They need to retain the numbers, because that's how we support ourselves. So we said we have to do something different to reach those kids. And we reached out to those parents that were in charge of those kids and said, what do you need? And they gave us a ton of feedback, and we built a program around what they wanted. Then March 12th, 13th the world fell apart, and we were able to then take that model and evolve it to what it is now for a lot of other kids. Mm-hmm. So I say that because what I think is happening right now is there are a lot of schools and a lot of districts that are simply putting their finger in the dam saying, we just need the CDC to say, go back to the way it was. We just need to find something to hold on to our kids. They don't, quote unquote, lose ground until we can transition back. My concern is you have some people that are extremely progressive. I've heard a lot of district leaders, superintendents, principals saying, this is an opportunity for us to do things the way that we wanted to do them. And I'm hearing a lot of other people say, I just can't wait till we can get back into our classrooms and teach the way we've always taught. Right. My concern is that we will just go back to the way it always was. I don't want us to just stay with everybody with a Chromebook and a laptop. I don't want us to just go back to this virtual world or to make that the new normal. What I want is us to embrace the idea of let's reach out to our stakeholders and find out what the kids need. Let's talk to our parents and figure out what's more flexible, and how we can meet them where they are. What I want is us to engage with teachers and say, teachers, how do we just teach kids to mastery? It's not about seat time anymore. It's not about just butts in seats. It's not about just covering a bunch of content. We need to make things as asynchronous and flexible as possible. Let's just make sure that our kids are learning, not necessarily just playing school. And that's only going to come if we continue to listen. And that's the part that I'm concerned about right now, is that honestly, I'm afraid that in a lot of situations, we're not listening, we're just responding. And a perfect example, and I'm sorry, I know I'm just going on and on here.
Go.
There's a school system very, very close to here where my kids go, where they're doing an amazing job. However, in the last month, they have now transitioned their model 3 different times. I originally signed my kids up for face-to-face. I thought for my own kids personally, I was ready to make that decision, and we decided we were going to go face-to-face. That was one of our options. Then they transitioned 2 weeks later and said, sorry, that's not going to be an option now. Here's what the hybrid model is going to look like that you're going to get. Last week on Thursday, they said, now everybody's going to go fully virtual. Now, in the last month, the data hasn't changed. The COVID numbers haven't changed. The science hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed is they're starting to listen to different people now, which is good, which is great. I'm glad they're finally listening. But if they have been listening to people all along, they wouldn't have had to adjust and constantly flip the script and constantly change. If they had been listening to their teachers that were telling them, this is what we need, they wouldn't have had to make adjustments and changes. If they had been listening to the parents and figure out what kind of flexibility and schedules they were looking for, they wouldn't have to constantly adjust and change. I'm a firm believer, get people to weigh in. You don't have to work so hard to get buy-in. And that's what we need to hold on to.
Now, that's the thing, and that's an interesting way to look in way to put it. A lot of my districts, like including my kids nearby, they went and it was going to be a hybrid. Then it went to full virtual. Do you think that? And I have my own opinion, and I'll share it after I hear yours. Do you think it's the Board of Education or parents? I mean, where do you think the pushing forces that made people want to change so quickly? Because around me, it was, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do hybrid. We're going to do half these days. There was one major cleaning day. And then, that was your week. Now everything's virtual. So who do you think pushed back the hardest to say everything changes?
I think it depends. Again, it depends on the situation, depends on the community. But one of the things that I think happens often in education, and we've been saying this now for decades, everybody has a school experience. Everybody's an expert in education. But when it comes to schools, when we look at administration, so I was one of these guys up until June 30th that wore a suit to work every single day. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes administrators step into the roles and they believe that they got that role because they were good in the classroom. They become administrators because they were good teachers or good within the system. As a result, they begin to get looked at by others as the experts. They're the decision makers. Mm-hmm. As opposed to the facilitators, they get turned to make decisions. That's what people came to me for. People still come to me and say, Schmittou, we need your advice. We need your guidance on what we should be doing. I talk to schools all the time that are looking for advice on how their communities and how their schools should proceed in this. They're coming to me, a guy who's living in Michigan. These are schools all across the country, as opposed to turning to their communities. I think we're looking for those so-called experts to tell us what we need to do, as opposed to looking for the people that are going to be impacted and asking for their support on what they need. I mean, ultimately in schools, our job is to serve communities, to serve kids and to serve families. Mm-hmm. They're the ones we need to be talking to. As administrators, you need to be talking to the teachers who are the experts, not necessarily just talking to the other people wearing suits.
And that's the thing. I don't remember in the last 5 months, I got one survey. Yeah. That was it. I was like, it was a survey, and that's how I felt. And no one really talked to me, but you're echoing it all the way through. It's just like, they need to talk to the people that matter. They need to talk to the people that run that place and really make it go, versus everyone else around it that can't control most of it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, the job of leadership isn't necessarily to make decisions. The job of leadership is to put the right people around the table. I'm not saying that in schools we need to constantly have majority rules vote. I'm not saying it needs to be completely democratic and every decision needs to go out to the masses. But what I'm saying is you do need to have some people that you can turn to say, Tell me what you're thinking from time to time, as opposed to let me tell you the decision that was made so I can try to sell you on it so you can go sell your friends.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think education is going to change completely when we're out of this, or do you think it's just going to go back to normal? Loaded question. I know.
I hope so. I hope that we are making some changes. I hope that what we're doing right now is we are identifying all of the things that are evergreen, that we are looking at all these things right now and we're saying, man, what's the stuff that has become that new sacred cow that we cannot give up no matter what? Mm-hmm. Whether we are in a virtual world forever or whether we get to go to face, there are some pieces that we get to use. I was doing a conference last week with a bunch of teachers. And on one of my slides, I had a Venn diagram that I drew. And I told them, this is probably the first time in my adult life I've actually ever used that thing I learned about in 7th grade. I actually used a Venn diagram. And on one end, I had face-to-face school, and the other one was virtual learning, remote learning. And I said, right now, we don't need to be focusing on either one of those circles. Just focus on the middle. That's the good stuff. That's the stuff that you have complete control over. But right now, we're all freaking out about the other ends. Just focus on that stuff that is amazing. The stuff about truly meeting kids where they are, knowing what your kids know, building off of strengths, not throwing labels on kids, not throwing labels on staff. John Hattie identified this stuff for us 15 years ago, and he has a best-selling book out right now about how to succeed in a remote learning world. And people are like, how did he turn that around so quickly? And the answer is because it's been good practice regardless of the platform. All he did was say, this is the stuff that worked 15 years ago. This is the stuff that worked 5 years ago. This is the stuff that worked 5 months ago. This is the stuff that will work for the next 5 days, because good practice is good practice.
I remember that book. I remember that book. And that's the thing. Do you remember like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they told us, okay, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to succeed in school and teaching. And my very first day, student teaching, my student teacher, mentor, he said, hey, did you buy all those books that they told you to? And I go, yeah. He goes, okay, throw them away. That's not how it is. And just throw them away. And I'm just like, and that was the best advice he ever gave me, because what I learned and how it is completely different. And John Hattie with his book too, he's like, this is how it should be. And now we're listening. Well,
and that's the reality. And I don't necessarily just want to talk John Hattie the whole time, but the guy says it all. And for those people that have lived under a rock for the last 2 decades and don't know John Hattie, did this huge meta-analysis, took 50,000 educational studies and boiled it all down and said, what's it all say? And what he found was 95% of the stuff we do in schools works. 95% of the stuff we do in schools works, which means it is almost impossible to screw up in schools, because 95% of the decisions you make are good. Mm-hmm. That is great news for educators. It is horrible news for people that are wanting to change practice, because it is very difficult to take something that is good and say, well, we can make it better. How do we focus on that stuff that works even better than good? And that's the difficult part. And that's where we're in right now, is we're recognizing that, hey, for the last 2 or 3 decades, school has been good. 95% of the stuff that we've been doing has been good and it's worked. But we have missed the mark in a lot of places. There's a reason we have huge equity gaps. There's a reason why some kids succeed and some kids don't. And it's because we're missing the stuff that works best. And that's our opportunity right now, is to jump all over that. And we're in this world right now where we have the opportunity to truly meet kids where they are. We have an opportunity now to engage parents like never before. Mm-hmm. This is our opportunity to truly figure out what makes a kid tick. To have a kid show off his pets and his brothers and his sisters and his basement or whatever things that bring him joy. This is our opportunity to connect with parents through Zoom meetings and Skype calls and Microsoft Teams meetings, whatever, like we never have before. We can do all the stuff that we know works because we have this opportunity if we embrace it as an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. When you, if you were to talk to an educator, and we talked a little bit before mm-hmm. how I'm starting my first full week next week. If you're going to talk to an educator and they had concerns on how to start, like how do I start, Schmittou? How do I start? With class and everything else, regardless of the subject, what would you tell them?
Focus on the focus. And that's the advice for the next 180 days, not just the first 10 days. Focus on the focus. Identify those priorities. I'm a huge guy with standards-based grading, talk about it all the time. But I'll just throw a stat out there. In 6th grade, there are 257 standards for a kid to learn if we just focus on the standards. 257, which means it's not going to happen. because you have 180 days of school. It breaks down to a kid mastering a standard every 0.7 days of their school career. That means if there are no snow days, if they're not sick, if you're not sick, if there's no COVID shutdown, not going to happen. So you have to make some instructional decisions as to which things are more important so you can focus on those. So number one is don't cover it all. Focus on the things that are most important. Second thing, focus on the data that matters more. Don't waste any time ever, especially in these first 2 weeks or ever, focusing on RIT scores or SAT prep or ACT prep, chasing numbers. Numbers mean nothing, especially if you don't know what the numbers mean or how those numbers got their value. If you don't understand what a scale score means, don't plug it into a computer and say, computer, tell me what to teach this kid. If you don't know how a RIT score was calculated, don't use it to teach a kid. Only use the stuff that you know and the stuff that matters to you. For example, best data that you can use for your kids. Imagine for yourself that money is not an issue. You have all the money in the world and that's not an obstacle. And you have the opportunity to go buy each of your students a birthday present this year. Spend your first 5-6 days of school trying to figure out what unique, amazing birthday present you could buy each of your kids. Wow. And I don't mean like generic pencils and balloons, something specific to that kid, to see if you truly know what makes that kid tick. That's data that you can do something with, because that tells me you know your kid, you know how to motivate them, you know how to inspire them, you know how to make them smile. And I guarantee you can teach a kid a whole lot more if you know what you want to buy them for their birthday, as opposed to knowing what their RIT score is.
Wow. Never thought about it that way. I mean, that's definitely looking at it from a great perspective. I mean, I wonder if we all can do that as teachers, how it would be, because you've seen it. I mean, it's a good segue. Your latest book, make an assessment, with the data that's important and everything else. By the way, third book to the left, on my side, over Dave's left shoulder. It's just the data that's important, because I mean, where did you with the making assessment? Making assessment
work. Yeah.
What inspired you? Like, what finally drove you to that point where you had to write about it? Because I know there had to be a tipping point.
I jokingly say this is a book that's been 21 years in the making. That's how long I've been in school. The title and the subtitle is probably the more important piece, because the title is Making Assessment Work for Educators Who Hate Data But Love Kids. So I've got my doctorate, and I'll be honest with you, the first time I ever had to do anything with statistics was getting my doctorate. I had been a successful teacher for more than a decade and never had to worry about standard deviations and stay-nines and all of that stuff. Whenever I heard the term data used in school, I thought it was like profanity. And even to this day, in a lot of places, I would get more street cred by dropping the F-bomb in a staff meeting than if I dropped the D word, data, in a staff meeting. You say data, and people roll their eyes and say, oh gosh, I'm checking out. They want to carve data in the bathroom stalls in the staff lounge, because they hate the word so much, because we have misused that word. Data in so many people's minds now simply means a label making machine, giving a kid a number, figuring out which table group they're going to be in, which advanced courses they get to take, a way to sort and select kids, and a way to sort and select teachers. We use data to label and identify good, bad, and ugly, as opposed to using data to determine next steps. Data like, when's your birthday? What do you want for your birthday? What makes you tick? What do you know, and where can I take you? That's data. But because people don't understand it, they misuse it. And that starts from the top down. We start putting mandates on, saying data is going to be one extra thing as opposed to something that you use. So the purpose of the book was just to try to get us back to normalcy and to get us back to understanding what it's all about. And I wrote an entire book about assessment and don't once use percentile, stay-nines, scale scores, RIT scores, SAT, ACT, or any of that mumbo jumbo. And I was able to crank out 150 pages, and that's after the editor cut out about half of it. So.
Oh, God. And that's the thing. It's just like with data, and you're right. I mean, I've been in meetings at different schools, and they say, oh, the data says this and the data says that. And we're just like, oh, everyone's just like, oh no, it's data again. And we want to talk about the kids, and we want to talk about how we can connect with kids. And it's just, why isn't more teachers, you, Burgess, Jeff, Ray, Jetter, Coda, why aren't more teachers and more administrators or PD people out there that don't think like the rest of us? I mean, why is there such a divide between the people who want to change it and the people who say it stays the same?
So I was one of those people when I was in the classroom. I was one of those people who thought, I got this. I am in charge of my classroom. I was a middle school teacher. I had 150 kids looking at me like I was the smartest person alive every single day. And I thought I knew it all. Then I met a guy named Rick Wormley. Don't know if you're familiar with his work or not, but I went to a conference and heard Rick Wormley speak. And I swear to God, he was slapping me across the face because he was just asking probing question after probing question after probing question. And it was stuff I didn't have answers to. And for the first time as a professional, when I was at in this place by myself from my district, so I could be real and be vulnerable and realize, man, I don't know this stuff. I was realizing I don't know a lot of stuff. And a lot of the stuff I was doing, I had simply been doing because the guy across the hall was doing it. The woman across the hall was doing it. It was kind of this group speak where a bunch of lemmings just kind of replicating the system. And, schools can be an interesting place to try to drive change. The status quo exists because there's a culture. That's another name for the status quo, is the culture. And if you come in and you start poking the bear and trying to disrupt things, you quickly find yourself on the outs of that culture. So sometimes you need that guy on the outside, the Rick Wormleys, like the Dave Burgesses, the Jetters, the coaches, the people like that to come in and poke the bear, if you will, and ask the questions that you can to ask internally, so that everybody can look around and be like, oh, that guy is either an idiot or a genius, but at least start the conversation. And far too often in schools, we tend to think that we're the experts and we have all the answers. So we don't look for that person on the outside, or we don't give that person on the outside the freedom to ask us questions. So, it's funny. I just put this out on social media yesterday that the last 2 days, I had two different people from two different podcasts reach out and say, Schmittou, you're saying all the stuff that we're thinking, but we don't have the guts to say. I'm like, all right, well, that's fine. Repeat after me then, if that's what it takes. Say, hey, Schmittou said this, and hopefully that starts the conversation. That's all I want, is I want people to start talking as opposed to just doing.
We just got to change it, man. Is that the status quo especially now, it needs to change, because we have the opportunity to step up and step to the front and really make education what it should be. I mean, I don't know what more to do. I just got to keep plugging along. That's why I started this podcast, because it's just like I saw an opportunity to highlight guys like you, highlight guys like Eric Francis and Bethany Hill and everybody else, just to show that there are so many people out there that want to push against it and want to change things for the better, and not just leave it as is. Because if education stays the same way for the next 10 years, I don't know what the hell I'm doing anymore.
And the reality is, educators are amazing people. I mean, educators are amazing. Teachers are amazing. Administrators are amazing. School board members, superintendents, amazing individuals. Our issue is the system oftentimes needs an overhaul. The system, however, is comprised of people that have a power to change the system. And this is par for course with a lot of things in America today. I hope you're listening to this, America. We're not just talking schools when we start talking about broken systems made up of individual people that have the power to change systems. So in schools, it's the same thing. We can complain about the system all we want until we recognize, hey, I actually live in a system. I'm a part of the system. The system is not some interwoven group of wires. We are the system. So ask the questions, change yourself, and the system changed, because you are a part of that. If I hurt my pinky finger, if I stub my toe tonight, I guarantee from head to toe, I'm going to be in pain saying some words. That little part of my system impacts my entire system. So as a teacher, you want to fix the system, fix you, period. Go from there.
Definitely. So Dave, looking at the time and everything else, I always like to keep these to about a half. So I do appreciate your time today. Definitely people to look out for in the educational world. I know Dave has books. Dave has PD. You see him all the time on Facebook. But Dave, what socials are out there that you'd want people to follow you at, just to kind of keep up on you?
Yeah. Twitter, Instagram, it's right there at Dave Schmittou. So if you can figure out how to spell my last name, you'll find me. Facebook is good too. But Twitter and Instagram are the ones where I tend to do a bunch of this kind of stuff. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to follow. Definitely.
And just to close out everything, if you had a magic wand, what would you change about education right now for the better?
Whew, man.
I know, loaded question.
I would try my best to eliminate a bunch of hoops and focus on finish lines. I would want people to really focus on where they're going and do anything they have to get there. It's almost like a dog show. If you need to go up the ramp and through the hoops and all that kind of stuff, cool. But don't make every single dog follow the same path. Just get to the finish line and tell kids, this is where we're going. I'm here to help you. I'm going to facilitate it. I'll guide you. Now go. And then let them go.
Beautiful. It's a great way, man. Great way to end it. Dave, I appreciate your time, brother. Just keep doing what you're doing. I know everyone will start checking you out at the Teach Better Squad and on your Twitter and everything else. And everyone else, please do us a favor. Just keep being safe. Please keep being safe. And everyone up in Kenosha, I know Dave will echo this as well. Pushbound Consulting and everybody else, just please be safe. Please be careful. And please just make sure you make some smart decisions while you're out there. It's getting rough out there. And literally it's an hour away from me. So it's getting really close. And then the whole, I don't know, did you hear about the Antioch thing? How that kid, that's like 20 minutes down the street. Like that's 20, 30 minutes down the street. So it's getting close. So definitely please be careful out there, guys. Here at Pushbound Consulting, Recovery Mode Podcast, please. What are you guys doing to push the boundaries of your classroom, either virtually or at home? And definitely just remember, we're here for our kids, man. We're here for the kids every single day. So Dave, appreciate the time, brother. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.